You've probably noticed that the left has a habit of doing something when it comes to these big political and social debates that are out there. They will say, oh, that's a straw man. They will claim that no one's really advocating for the following thing. And then as soon as they're in a position to make that thing happen, they do it. Right? And this is a continuing incrementalism rooted in dishonesty in the public discourse that the left engages in. Transgender rights is a perfect example of this. 10 years ago, talking about whether men should be able to use women's bathrooms and public accommodations, biological men using biological women's accommodations, that was a straw man, we were told. That was absurd. Now it's a civil rights issue. Now it's, oh my gosh, and with this new LGBTQ ruling in the Supreme Court, gender identity is now protected, right? There's now this protection for gender identity. So you say, okay, how is this going to work? And now there's going to be lots of lawsuits that come from that. Gorsuch wrongly decided this one. I would note that not even, you can't even count on so-called constitutionalists to, all of a sudden transgender rights is a thing in the Constitution because, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that the founders didn't have that in mind. I'm pretty sure that the Congress legislation that doesn't mention this didn't have it in mind. But anyway, another area I would say, and you would try to show the inherent wrongness and even absurdity of some of these left-wing positions. You'd bring up things like, what about sports? Should biological men be able to compete in women's sports? And 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they would have said, that's a straw man, Buck. No one's arguing for that. No, they are. Now it's standard. Now you have biological males who are competing in women's sports, and this creates all kinds of issues, and including, I even brought up combat sports, including things like MMA, boxing, biological males. And I've gone through these examples and said, couldn't we all agree that if you have, XY chromosomes, if you're a biological male fighting women as a means of, making income for yourself and in a sports setting, there's something wrong with that. Now you're not allowed to say that, at least on the woke left. 10 years ago, it was, no, come on, Buck. No one's saying that. You're noticing a pattern, right? Well, I just want to add to this the most recent example of this, where what was the extreme, what was the thing that we could point to say, hold on, you guys, what about this? We can all agree that's crazy, right? Now it's not. Now they've changed their mind. Now they've decided that the thing that some of us were warning was at the bottom of the slippery slope is where we are, and their pretense that wasn't going to happen was just a tactic. It was dishonest. And the example I have in mind here is in California now. They're going to start, Gavin Newsom, who's one of these climate change is an existential threat guys, of course, he just signed a bill that says that prison inmates can petition to be housed under their gender identity instead of their biological sex. We've really gone there now. So now we have 12-year-olds who are 12-year-olds with male organs can think they are female and then demand access to the 12-year-old girls' locker rooms and changing and everything else. And no one's allowed to have a problem with that. You have men are allowed to fight women or biological men. I don't know what we're supposed to, trans women. I don't even know what the terminology is that they think we're supposed to use because they change it all the time. And now we've reached the point where, that's right. If you're facing a life sentence, would you rather be a 200-pound, 6-foot-tall guy in a male prison where you're going to have a lot of very dangerous and frightening people around you? Or would you rather be a 200-pound male who has a gender identity that he claims is female and now in a female prison under California law? Now, they can deny it, they say, based on safety concerns. So what they're going to do is leave this loophole so that they can stop the most obvious and egregious exploitation of this, but it's clearly going to be exploited. Now you're going to have biological, and it's not based on, you don't have to have had the transition surgery. No, It's all gender identity. It's all psychological. It's all in your head. I'm telling you this much: if you're a male and you've got yourself a life sentence at San Quentin prison, I think you'd rather get transferred to either the all women's wing. I don't know if they have that there, or a women's prison in general. Be a lot safer, among other things. So yeah, that's now where we are with trans rights in America, and I just note that this is the game that the left continues to play. This is how progressives always cloak their real intentions whenever they run against any resistance from the mass of the American people. They cloak their real intentions in the incrementalism that we see, and I'm thinking about this, one, because of these news stories like Gavin Newsom just signing this in California, signing this bill, but also this is really the approach of the Democrat Party wholesale. This is what they do. All right, they say, we just want this thing. And you say, well, hold on a second. If you're abandoning a certain principle to get that one objective, wouldn't you also want to do the following things that the American people would not be accepting of, would not agree with, would not want legislation passed to support? They say, no, that's a lie. We don't want those things. We just want this thing. You'll see it with countless issues. You'll see it with all the climate change stuff. Oh, we're not going to institute punitive measures in the economy to make sure that people... No, they will. Right now it's subsidies, but when the subsidies aren't enough for green energy stuff, then they move to punishing people that make bad decisions. Oh, another one in California. They're going to get rid of all non-electric cars. I think they said by 2035 was the... Not allowed to have a non-electric car in California. Friends, if they can make you wear a mask and we all just do it, and we all just go along like sheep outside, wearing our masks, they can make you do a lot of things. And that's what's happening now. We are entering a period of not just centralization of power, but centralization and utilization with the help of digital technology and the ability of bureaucrats to monitor and have the dissemination of policy that's instantaneous, as well as the monitoring of individual compliance with those policies. We are closer to a turnkey authoritarian state than we realize in this country. The only thing that stops it from happening is the will and the mindset of the American people. But our Democrat fellow Americans increasingly embrace this stuff. They have no problem with it. They see no issue with it. So I want to note that. And another thing, just a news story that I wanted to... Sometimes I get so caught up in the political debate of the day and the philosophy around it and behind it that I don't get into some of these news stories. We do have the Project Veritas. I think we're going to have James O'Keefe on tomorrow. I had a scheduling. We have so many big guests. We have, Megyn and Hogan and Dinesh and Senator Cruz. We got so many big guests that we got to move things around sometimes. So yesterday we're going to do it, but then I had to move a guest during the show. Anyway, we're going to talk about what happened with Project Veritas, what they've shown in Minneapolis with the largely Somali-based diaspora community in Minneapolis and the voting, ballot harvesting and vote cheating, essentially. Election fraud. That's what they seem to have unearthed. And you have to remember, you go back, there have been some big sting journalism that's been done, undercover journalism, including by Project Veritas, among other groups, that has really hurt the Democrats. This stuff, there's a reason why the media always closes ranks against this kind of journalism when it targets Democrats, because they know, even though the Democrat media undermines the very premise of their jobs and what they claim to be doing with this stuff, they also know that they got to protect their fellow libs here. If the American people are actually exposed to the truth of Acorn, remember that one? Or Planned Parenthood, remember that one? Or, you go down this list, they might feel very differently about some of these organizations, some of these community organizer outfits, and also the Democrat Party that supports all of them. So we're hoping to have James on tomorrow. The other story that caught my attention, just news story, and it's I have a different takeaway from it than a lot of other people. Brad Parscale. He is the former Trump campaign manager. So he had a big job. And I don't know the guy. I don't know anything really about him. I mean, I know some things about him, but I've never met him. I have no personal relationship with him. He was arrested. There are allegations of threats of self-harm, that he was going to commit suicide. Daily Mail today says he's under investigation for stealing a lot of money. I don't know. I've had no interaction with the Trump campaign on any of this stuff, and I haven't even been able to really talk to any of my sources about it, and they probably, honestly, won't say very much because this is some sensitive stuff. But Parscale obviously had a bad day, got arrested. I mean, bad day is putting it mildly, but he got arrested. What I thought was so interesting was that he is on body cam footage, and he's standing outside his home in Florida. He is wearing like jean shorts, but he's shirtless, Florida. And the police say, get on the ground, get on the ground. But they say it twice to him while an officer is moving toward him to tackle him. And I can say that watching that video, I'm thinking this guy is posed. He hasn't wrestled anybody. He hasn't resisted arrest. He hasn't pulled his hands away. He's just standing there talking to the officers, just talking to them. And all of a sudden, an officer's like, get on the ground, get on the ground. And I mean, there's about a 2-second pause before he's just straight up NFL-style linebacker tackled. He's shirtless on the cement. I mean, just throws him right down. Now, Brad Parscale is obviously startled by this and says, I didn't do anything, but he allows the officer to put his hands behind his back, put the cuffs on him, and arrest him. And in a sense, there's the happy ending, such as it is to the story, is cops didn't have to taser him. Cops didn't have to pull their weapons on him. So they tackled his butt right to the ground. And I've seen there's some people I really respect out there in social media who say that under the circumstances, this is a legitimate use of police tactics. It's borderline. I think it's borderline. I think under the circumstances, now, he wasn't severely injured. They didn't pull their guns. It's also a lesser issue. But I can see that there sometimes are gray areas. But my point with the Brad Parscale takedown, and I'm not even getting into all the campaign stuff. I don't know enough about that. Honestly, I don't care. He doesn't run the campaign anymore. And if he stole money, he should pay the price for that. If he didn't, people shouldn't be lying about him. And the guy's obviously having a tough time. I don't like to ever, and this is true with Democrats. It's true with the left. And Parscale is supposed to be on our team. He's a Republican, pro-Trump, obviously. But I don't like to joyride in the wreckage of other people's lives. I think that that's gross. And this guy is obviously going through a very difficult circumstance. And like I said, I've never met him. So I just see this and I feel badly for anyone who's threatening suicide. You feel badly for the guy. If he was in fact threatening suicide, we got to see what the facts are. But I just look at this from the perspective of somebody that all summer, one of the things I kept seeing in the media, pushed all the time. I talked to you about the fundamental lie of Black Lives Matter is that black men are being hunted by police without consequence out of racism systematically or systemically. Both, you could argue. And that's a lie. There's another thing that you would hear. This was kind of the secondary lie behind that if so-and-so was white, this wouldn't have happened. And I think that the Parscale takedown, here you have a famous Trump-supporting white millionaire who is, to my eyes, not a threat when he's taken down to anybody. He's not, they could have said, sir, put your hands behind your back. They said, get on the ground, which would unsettle me a little bit for a second, too. What do you mean, get on the ground? And they could have said, sir, you're under arrest, put your hands behind your back. And then if you won't, but they went with get on the ground. Okay. And I understand procedurally, they heard there were weapons there. And look, but the point here is that the cops often rough people up, including white males. And usually they're doing so appropriately. Usually when they use force, cops are correct. Not always. And, it happens to people all the time. And that's not a justification. It's just let's live in reality, folks, okay? If Brad Parscale can get suplexed on the pavement outside of his own home when he's shirtless, they thought he had a gun hiding in his tiny jean shorts? I mean, maybe, but unlikely. The guy's shirtless. He's talking to them. He hasn't attacked anyone. And he gets, it looks like they're using him as a tackling dummy. And my point here is just, why it didn't result in tasers and gun? Because he did not resist arrest, and there's a lesson here. When the cops are saying you're under arrest, you're coming with us, you have to comply. You don't get to talk about a history of systemic this or that. No. You have to comply. If there's excessive force, you take that up in the courts. You don't get to just say, I'm sorry, I'm going to see if I'm stronger than this cop now because I don't want to get arrested today. That leads to tragic outcomes. That leads to very bad things for the cops and for the individual being arrested. There's a lesson here. Here you have a super rich and well-known, he's down in Florida, he runs the Trump campaign, white guy who, I mean, they really threw his butt on the ground. It was harsh. And was it necessary? But the bigger takeaway that I have is he didn't fight them. He allowed them to cuff him, and everything was fine. If we look at all these BLM cases we have seen, how many of them involve somebody who resists arrest, fights the cops, pulls their hands away, doesn't obey commands, pulls at their taser, goes for their gun? There's a difference here, folks. There's a lesson. And it's a lesson that we would all be better off if people would just be honest about it. Don't fight the cops during an arrest. What does losing your house have to do with the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, here's the problem. FBI will tell you that cybercrime's up about 75% since COVID-19 hit, and it turns out that home title theft is a cybercrime. Your home's title exists online, the bad guys find it, then they use a quit claim deed to kick you off, and then they take out loans once they've put themselves on your home's title against the equity in your home. So they take the money and stick you with the payments. Sometimes you won't even find out about this until you're left with a foreclosure notice. You've got to create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. The moment Home Title Lock notices any tampering, they will shut it down around your home's title online. Go to HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code RADIO, and that will get you 30 free days of protection. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code RADIO. That'll get you 30 free days of protection. You can also check online to see if you're already a victim of this crime and don't even know it. I just want to throw this in the mix. This is kind of a throwback to what we were talking about the last hour, but libs never learn. They never care about what the facts are. And this Trump tax thing is yet another example of that. Here's Sherrod Brown, who's still doing the whole Russia thing when it comes to Trump, even after we've seen his taxes played too.
Most American banks won't quit. They quit financing Trump years ago. He turned to Deutsche Bank, and Deutsche Bank is an outlier and an outlaw among many of the world's banks and the world's legitimate banks. And Trump is clearly, if there's something that Putin has on Trump, we hear everything ranging from sex tapes to huge debt that he owes, huge money, as Kamala Harris pointed out, just a lot of money he owes to somebody. And I mean, so clearly some things are going on there, and we should know what they are. Trump clearly doesn't want the public to know. It's why his behavior towards the autocrats, especially Putin, is so sordid and so un-American. And I think that the more we know, the more even Trump's base will begin to turn against this president.
Nope. Everything he said there is bull. This guy has no idea what the heck he's talking about. He was some Democrats even about a year ago were saying he was going to be a real presidential contender. What he's saying is complete crap. But they'll never change. In 10 years, you'll still have people say the Russians had something on Trump. We know they did. They'll never change. Doesn't matter what the fact pattern is. Doesn't matter what the reality of this situation is. This is the way it's going to be, folks. They'll believe the Russia crap forever. She's back, everybody. Megyn Kelly, the one and only. You certainly know her from her time at Fox News, and she's got a new show out now, a podcast, The Megyn Kelly Show, which you can all download wherever you listen to podcasts. Right now, it's number 2 on the iTunes news charts, making a lot of noise already. Fantastic stuff. Megyn, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thank you for having me. I noticed, here's one thing we have to fix. Apparently, I'm behind Hillary Clinton, which, please, we cannot let that stand.
No, that is unacceptable. Plus, Hillary's really good at Hillary's really good at second place. So you want to make sure that you beat Hillary. That's really her, whether it's Obama or Trump, Hillary likes to come in second. So tell us what you see right now in the scene. I mean, we're fortunate that we've got you joining us with the debate coming up. And in fact, people will be hearing the debate just a little bit after they hear this interview, or they'll be watching the debate, I should say. Some will listen on radio. But what are you expecting tonight?
Theatrics, right? I think Trump, if there's one thing he knows how to do, it's keep television interesting. He's the master at it. And one of the biggest things that I gleaned from that New York Times report on his taxes was the guy was struggling financially with all of his investments and his properties. It wasn't until he got The Apprentice and made over $400 million doing that thing. And why is that? It's because whatever you have to say about Trump, that he's bad at television is not one of the things. So I think it'll be compelling. Right? This is not like a debate between Biden and Mitt Romney. It's going to be on. I think Trump will try to stoke Biden's anger. I don't think there's a way of trying him to get him to have a senior moment. You know, like you could give him like a riddle. You really wanted to be mean, you could go to your kid's brain teaser book. See how he does. And I think if Trump can make it through the COVID section of the night without getting too beat up, he'll do okay.
Do you think that Biden's going to be able to evade on the following two issues that I'm going to bet? I mean, look, it would be malpractice if Trump didn't go after him in these two areas. One is the Democrat Party's really open support of, I know that they try to parse this, but support of the BLM movement that has led to a lot of riots over the summer. They can say that there was mostly peaceful stuff going on, too, but the riots are what we all remember. Do you think that he can corner him on that one? And also, do you think he can force Biden, whether it's Chris Wallace or Trump, to answer the question about whether he's going to pack the Supreme Court? I think that's a completely valid question.
Yes, I think Wallace is going to ask that. I think Wallace, the way you do it at a debate as the moderator is you pack into the question the candidate's previous attempts to dodge. So you'd say something like, you know, Vice President Biden, I understand that you've said you're not going to play that game, and that's Trump's game when it comes to whether you'll pack the Supreme Court. But the fact remains that some people within the Democratic Party and some well-known intellectuals within the party are pushing hard for that to be your very first move. Will you tell this audience sitting at home right now trying to decide whether to vote for you based on this issue, whether that is on the table and something you might be prepared to do? And as soon as he started to wobble, I would jump in and say, so no, you're not answering the question. Just let's make it clear, you're not going to answer.
Where were you? And for everyone, we're speaking to Megyn Kelly. She's got a new show out, podcast, The Megyn Kelly Show, which you can download wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, please give it a rating because it's brand new. So you should tell other folks out there what you think about it. Obviously, fantastic. But Megyn, I got to admit, one thing that I like to tell the audience about how I'm right about most of the big stuff. Of course, right? I'm a radio host, so I do that a lot. But one area, I mean, you got it. But one area where I have to admit I was wrong was from the beginning. I was just saying, there's no way Biden's actually going to, I mean, at the beginning of the primary, right? There's no way Biden's actually going to be the candidate. And now we're seeing all of the, you know, the lids being called on the campaign day after day. I think 8 of them or 10 of them in September already. This senior moments, I think, to charitably call them. All the reasons some of us thought that he would not end up as the candidate. Is this a surprising circumstance to you that Joe Biden's even in this debate tonight? Or have you just made peace with that and said, okay, this is what we got?
Look, I think the mainstream Democratic Party is not nearly as far left as the AOC wing of it. And her wing is not big enough yet to control the nomination process. And let's not forget the press. The press killed Bernie Sanders. You know, the left-wing press, which is redundant, decided there was no way they were going with Bernie, that he couldn't beat Trump. And they got rid of Bernie. And I think that's why the Bernie Sanders supporters are so irritated, because they saw the media do it. They're biased towards the right and they're biased towards the left wing of their own party. So they got what they wanted, which is Joe Biden, who they thought was pretty moderate. And now they're trying to just keep the guy upright just so they can get him across the finish line on November 3rd. I mean, it's very obvious to me that the most Democrats are out there, like, just, you know, it's the same thing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, how they really just wanted to get her to January. It's with Biden, it's like, just say very little, just don't have a lot of those moments before November 3rd. When you get to November 4th, you can do whatever intelligence test or memory test or whatever you want to do, but just keep quiet between now and then.
Yeah.
Which is why tonight's going to be so interesting.
I was just going to say, I think that if the Democrats end up losing with Biden as their nominee, they have nobody to blame but themselves. I mean, they had a field of about 20 candidates, and they went with the guy that a lot of us, I mean, I admitted I was one of them, a lot of us were saying, there's just no way. He's too old. He's lost so many presidential elections in the past, or presidential campaigns. He didn't even get to the general. And it's the same thing with the Ruth Bader Ginsburg situation. A lot of very intelligent people, including Democrats, were saying during the Obama years, hey, guys, I know you all love her push-up routines and her amazing, stuff that she does in the gym and all this, and the RBG action figures. Those are all real things, as you remember. But really, it would be better for the Democrats if we put somebody who had a longer, and they didn't do it. And, elections have consequences. Decisions have consequences. I think the decision to put Joe Biden forward and the decision to have RBG could end up being really very sad stories for the Democrats in the long run when they look at what actually ends up happening from this. But Megyn, I want to ask you, you're back now. What do you want to do? I mean, you were somebody who you had a primetime show at Fox. You had a national show at NBC. Now you've started your own podcast. It's obviously getting a lot of listens already. What's the Megyn Kelly Show all about now?
It's about free speech to begin with. It's about being able to say what you want freely and openly about any idea, any news subject. There are no golden cows, right? Like, we're going to talk about all the issues, the third rails of our national discussion, and we're going to do it freely and openly and honestly. And we may not always agree, my guest and I, but no one's going to get penalized by not being able to say something. That I'm so upset about what's happening in our country now, where there's a segment of the podcast that we're doing that I call "You Can't Say That" or "Do That" or "Think That." Oh wait, this is America, and to some extent that's really what got me off of my couch, because I was having a lovely time off, and the thing that really started to irritate me was how many people were getting fired for saying one quote wrong thing, and the number of teenagers who are getting kicked out of colleges for having the wrong thought or having a stupid moment. And I think those of us who have the ability to create a forum where ideas can be discussed openly and honestly without fear of cancellation or the mob coming, maybe they'll come, but they'll have no power, the more of us should do it, because it's time to start fighting back against, even the people who will never criticize Trump. They need to understand sometimes it's worth criticizing him. You need to understand what he does when it's genuinely bad versus when the mainstream media is constantly telling you it's bad. And we need somebody to fight back against those woke scolds who has a platform and who can get guests who will come on who, maybe won't go on some of the other shows.
All right. Sounds good to me. Megyn, good luck to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody should go check out the Megyn Kelly Show. It's in the Apple Podcast Store or wherever you listen to podcasts, the various platforms that folks like out there. And also make sure you give it a rating. Megyn, thank you so much for joining, and great to see you.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you, Buck. All the best.
I will say that when you talk to the Trump campaign and when you talk to White House officials, they point to the Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, and saying that this maybe could help them with some women, some at least evangelical white women, looking at this and saying, well, this is the president putting up a woman for one of the highest and most revered jobs in the country. But there are a lot of course, women who are also looking at Judge Barrett saying she is a threat to my reproductive rights. She's a threat to women's rights. And when you see it in that regard, she could be hurting President Trump, and he could then be having even more problems with women.
There's, I think, PBS correspondent Yamiche Alcindor telling everybody her political analysis of the Coney Barrett, the ACB, what we're going to call her, because the libs hate it when we do, the ACB nomination. Notice the language. Reproductive rights, women's rights. What women's rights? Other than a federal right to abortion that no one really believes is in the Constitution, but they pretend. Other than that, what are the women's rights that Amy Coney Barrett is a threat to? ACB has had a career that 99.9% of dudes out there in America would be like, wow, that's a great legal career. I mean, before she was nominated for the Supreme Court. They're really going to try this. She's submissive. She just does her husband's, obeys her husband's will, like she's some Handmaid's Tale automaton, a throwback to, male-female relations in the 19th century or something. I mean, is that really what they're going to try? I just think that they don't have very much here at all. They're flailing, and they're so desperate to get something big going against ACB. Right now, it's just all desperation. It was so smart. I'm sorry. Anybody who thought putting a male forward for this nomination would have been a good idea. Look, I'm not saying it's right or fair that this is the case. I'm just saying that if you look at the politics, they absolutely would have Me Too'd whoever the guy was. They would have found somebody. Because there are a lot of women, unfortunately, who are, adhere to this, modern third wave or whatever it is, feminism. And they think that Me Too is a movement not based on the individual truth of the allegations don't matter. It's a movement where you have to be all in or nothing. You're not allowed to say, yeah, Harvey Weinstein's a dirtbag and should get everything that's coming to him, but Justice Kavanaugh didn't do anything. No. If you're Me Too, you're supposed to be all in all the way. And whoever it is that they're told is a target of Me Too, they're supposed to go after and oppose. And that's why you couldn't have a male as the option here. So we'll have to see. We should also hear from noted legal scholar Whoopi Goldberg on ACB. Play 4.
Well, perhaps if we can keep in mind that the United States of America is made up of so many different religions and groups that your religion is just part of the religious thought process in the United States. So when you are ruling as a judge, you can't rule as a Catholic judge or a Jewish judge. You have to rule as a judge. You cannot bring what you think you need to do, because we're not a Catholic country. We're not a Jewish country. We're the United States of America. We have lots of Muslims, so you can't go by your faith. You can only go by the rule of law here. That's my first thing. And maybe judges need to recuse themselves, because if you are a judge of faith and you come upon something you don't feel comfortable deciding on, you're going to go with your faith.
Did you know that 70% of America identifies as Christian? I would wonder if she understands that. I would also want to know, why is it that we always have to have this conversation about the dogma lives loudly within you, as Senator Feinstein. Oh, we'll get to her mask thing in a little bit. The dogma lives loudly within you. You have to recuse yourself if it touches on issues of your faith. But did anyone say that about Sotomayor? Right? Does anyone ever bring up these issues when it comes to a liberal Supreme Court justice? No, only when there's a conservative is religious faith and Christian religious faith an issue. I think that's so interesting, isn't it? Almost like there's not really a principle here. There's just people who are upset that they're not getting their way. Senator John Kennedy down in Louisiana, I think he understands the dynamics here and how this is going to go. Play 8.
It's only Monday. So far, Judge Barrett has been called a religious bigot, a racist, an anti-feminist, a anti-public health. Her opponents haven't gotten around yet to calling her an alien lizard person, but it'll come. Before it's over with, I'm afraid that they'll accuse her of drowning little warm puppies. That's not what this is all about, though. I think almost all of my Democratic colleagues know that none of these things are true.
And yet they'll say them anyway. And I don't think we should let this go. I don't think you should just make this deal in your mind that, oh, it's politics. No. A good person, a moral and decent human being, would recoil at the thought, would find it outlandish that anybody would think it's okay to call into question a person's fundamental character with lies. Right? There is no political party, there's no politician or political motive in America in existence that would make me knowingly and willingly say that I believe someone is a rapist in front of his wife, in front of his children, because I didn't want them to get a job, knowing that that's a lie. There's something really sick and immoral about this, friends. We shouldn't just let this go. I understand we're all prepared for them to smear ACB in whatever ways they can. That doesn't even make it a little bit more okay. In fact, if anything, it shows us how morally repugnant the left and the Democrat Party has become, that this is no problem. They lied about Kavanaugh. They lied about him. I mean, they had people coming forward who no intelligent human being could believe were credible witnesses of what they were saying happened. I mean, the third, Swetnick, when she came forward, she didn't even believe it. Just attention-seeking nonsense. And deeply destructive, but they put her forward. No one was ever held to account for this. Nobody was ever punished for this. So I just think I'm not willing to just part with the idea that anyone who will make the kind of allegations against Amy Coney Barrett that we know are coming, just because it's politics doesn't make it okay. People who do this are bad people, friends, and they deserve your scorn. They deserve disrespect.